Today's game allowed me to reach behind an enemy to open a door, which I then promptly Spartan kicked them through using my cybernetic leg. Honestly, I could probably end the review right now and at least one person would buy the game based on that alone. My name is Graeldon, I'm on an impossible journey to review every Steam game in alphabetical order, and today we're playing 1001st Hyper Tower. Let's begin. To say that 1001st Hyper Tower is a confused mess of ideas would be fundamentally incorrect, but to say that it looks like a confused mess would be correct. But it's a fun, confused mess, and sometimes that's all that matters. Released on Steam on the 7th of November 2019, developed by Toaster12D3 and published by A Game from Low Poly Stan, 1001st Hyper Tower describes itself as a roguelite first-person shooter set in an Arabian cyberpunk world. The gameplay reminds me of Twitch shooters like Quake, but rather than being in an arena, progression is decidedly vertical as you attempt to make your way up a procedurally generated tower made from destructible voxels. The story doesn't really exist in the game itself, but can be found in the store description. While it would benefit from some proofreading, the general gist is that your kingdom faced a revolution and the best way to restore peace is to ask the genie at the top of the tower to grant you a wish. Unfortunately for you, the tower is inhabited by all manner of things that want to murder you. That said, your biggest enemy will probably be gravity. The game opens with a short cinematic of the player falling from the tower, despite the fact you've never set foot on it. In fact, this cinematic plays every time you die, with one difference that I'll come back to later. After the opening splash logo, we see the main menu. It's serviceable, and while the lack of graphical options in the settings is pretty weird, the thing that stands out to me the most when reviewing the footage is the font choice. Much of the in-game text, including writing on the walls and the controls themselves, often use this super stylized Arabic font. It is rather hard to read though, so I understand why they opted for something simpler. Surely there's a happy middle ground to be found though? The tutorial opens with the player laying on a bed of something being carried on a small airship while a mysterious figure looks down on us, all Johnny Silverhand-like. They take us back to their base and kindly replace our quote-unquote violently broken leg with a cybernetic replacement that allows us to Spartan kick and triple jump, two abilities that are 100% necessary when climbing a tower like this one. The tutorial is delivered via text at the bottom of the screen that is triggered by your position on the map rather than a timed conversation. On one hand, this feels a bit unnatural, but on the other hand, it makes it easier to backtrack and review missed dialogue. Before I explain some of the key mechanics, I need you to ignore my failed attempts at jumping in the background. I swear I'm better than that Cuphead journalist. I was just testing for fall damage or any wall running abilities. Spoiler alert, there's none of either. So, gameplay. You can carry two guns at once, and your starting weapons are a revolver and a flare gun. Guns will use one of three different ammo types: bullets, fuel, or energy, which are color-coded yellow, red, and green respectively. In the early game, ammo is pretty scarce, so switching weapons to one that uses ammo that you've stockpiled is a good tactic, but you may find yourself resorting to giving enemies the boot, regardless if you're not careful. You also need to be aware that reloading discards any remaining ammo in the current magazine rather than simply topping it up to full. This means you'll need to be careful about when you choose to reload, or you'll find yourself running out of ammo even faster than you should. There are ammo crates around, but they'll usually give you the exact opposite of the ammo that you need, or in some cases, just drop a bomb to make sure you're staying on your toes. Holding right click to aim down the sights activates slow-mo mode, and honestly, leaping through the air while raining bullets down on enemies is fun enough in real time and vastly improved by being Arabian Neo from the Matrix. The levels themselves are a vertical slice of the overall tower. Fall down too far and you'll die, or go up too high and you'll find grey blocks that you can't interact with. The levels themselves are basically a mishmash of buildings connected by ladders and precarious jumps, resulting in some oddities like doorways that are blocked by a floor that is one block higher than the ground, and other weirdness. In other games, I might deduct points for poor level design as a result of the procedural generation, but here, I think it actually works. It enhances the feeling of chaos and haphazardness by making the space feel more claustrophobic and random, pushing the player to navigate by jumping around the sides of buildings in unconventional ways, making good use of the 3D space. The tutorial highlights this as well, with an entire section dedicated to the importance of ladders. As confusing as the level layout can be, there is always a holographic map to be found. Personally, I think the description is misleading though, as it's more of a compass than a map, adding small arrows to the screen that show the position of nearby weapon crates and health stations. These are also color-coded to make it easy to know what you're heading towards, even if you don't know the exact weapon. Heck, the cross for the health stations even depletes to show you which ones can still be used and which can't, which is a really nice UI touch. That said, it would be even better if they weren't breaking the Geneva Convention by using the red cross symbol, but hey, take the wins where you can, right? Anyway, the other big mechanic you'll learn in the tutorial is the perk system. Basically, find rooms or defeat bosses to earn hypercells, and then spend them at wish machines to get bonuses that last for the rest of your run, such as extra health, more drops from enemies, extra mid-air jumps, adding a stun to your kick, or the most overpowered one of all, fully replenish your ammo and earn an extra life, which fully restores your health if you die. Standing at the top of the tutorial area, I will admit that the sight of the tower in the distance makes for a great set piece, so it's time to start the actual game. And I was not prepared to get my butt kicked this hard. Holy heck, there are no punches pulled here. In a nutshell, each area is divided in half, with a mini-boss at the halfway point, and the actual boss waiting at the end. During the first hour and a half, I didn't manage to beat the mini-boss. This is partially because the mini-boss area acts as a divider between floors, and not only is every mini-boss crazy powerful, but the relatively open area is filled to the brim with other enemies, and the bullets from the mini-boss, in this case the Great Silkworm, because this is the Silk Road, so of course it's a silkworm, will often destroy the environment, slowly but surely reducing the amount of cover you have available to cower behind. I put my struggles down to two reasons, other than being very rusty at fast-paced FPS games. Firstly, while giving enemies foot-in-mouth disease is effective for removing freebooters, they only drop ammo when they die, so kicking them out the door means no extra ammo for you. Secondly, there are basically zero iframes, so if you get caught between an enemy with a rapid-fire weapon and a hard place, all that's going to be left in a fraction of a second is a smoking crater where you used to be. Considering that many enemies have rapid fire but inaccurate weapons, getting close enough to literally go toe-to-toe with them is pretty risky, and was certainly the cause of a few untimely deaths for myself. Personally though, I did manage to power through, only to be confronted with a secret mini-boss that actually wasn't too difficult and exploded into a miniature black hole, which was actually pretty cool. And then the actual level boss, a large multi-level airship called the Caravaneer that is a multi-stage fight with infinitely respawning enemies. Thankfully, there's also an infinitely respawning group of supply crates to keep you topped up throughout the fight. Oh, and did I mention that you need to basically do a leap of faith from the tower to the ship? Because you do. And it's freaking awesome. The fight itself is basically a puzzle trying to figure out where the weak spot is. Hint, it's usually the big glowy pink things. And how to actually get within firing range of it, or while dodging fire from both it and the various other enemies scattered around. It's frantic, it's chaotic, and it's actually great boss design. Except for the bit where parts of the ship can collapse from under you when destroyed, so you need to be super mindful of your positioning. But hey, bonus points for creativity. And I'm pleased to say that all of the area bosses are of a similar caliber, requiring some creative on-the-fly problem solving. Seriously, more games need to design boss fights like this, rather than bigger version of a normal enemy but it deals more damage and has more health. The fights aren't entirely flawless though, with some interesting physics at times, but I'm willing to overlook these issues if it means we get more things like this. Honestly though, the best part is that beating the area boss also unlocks a shortcut that allows you to skip to the highest unlocked area after dying. You see, when you eventually meet your untimely demise, you see the short falling cutscene that we saw at the start of the game, only now the main character has a cybernetic leg. I didn't notice this difference until rewatching the footage, but it's a small detail that I'm glad they included. At this moment, you can choose to press R to restart or S to shortcut, which takes you to an isolated version of the final room from the tutorial. This is a great system with one fatal flaw that made my heart plummet when I restarted the game in a later session. You can't access this area from the main menu. I opened the game and only saw the option to play, and it dropped me back into the first level. This was, understandably, a very low point for me emotionally, but thankfully I had a theory and decided to jump to my death, and yes, the same press R or S screen appeared and my shortcut to the second area was still available. Thank goodness, otherwise I might have thrown the game itself off a very tall tower. As you continue to climb the tower, the difficulty increases. You'll discover more powerful weapons and of course more powerful enemies as well. Your most difficult foe, however, will be the graphics themselves, because apparently these devs love, and I mean love, bloom effects, to the point where you'll feel like you're being constantly flashbanged, when in reality you're just looking at a wall. Eventually, you'll find yourself at the top of the tower, going up against Nephilim and other nonsense, using a gun that literally shoots black holes. So that's cool. What's not cool is that after killing all of the clones, which are the final level's boss fight, there's a short cutscene that plays showing some kind of deity with a red lightsaber, and you're promptly force pushed straight off the tower, returning you to the lowest floor. This is because although you've finished the game, you haven't technically beaten it until you've solved some hidden puzzles and completed some challenges to unlock the true ending. I didn't go to that extent, mostly because I value my sanity, but the first step involves using the information on the displays at the end of the last level to figure out how much ammo to load into the machine on the first level. I did find this machine in my playthrough and figured out you can load ammo into it, but after filling up all the gauges, nothing happened. If you love this kind of game, you probably won't be put off by the idea of having to climb the tower again, and you could be one of only 1.5% of players who actually reach the true ending, and also one of 1.7% that meet the Archaeax. I'm not going to try to convince you that you should try this game, because realistically it has a relatively small target audience. But that's also why I love indie games. They aren't afraid to try new things simply because it's what they enjoy or find interesting. I'm also mindful that I've been speaking fairly positively about the game overall, and while that is indeed my overall sentiment, there are some flaws that I need to point out to ensure that I'm doing my due diligence and keeping you informed. If you're sharp, you may have noticed that I haven't really discussed the sound design, and that's because it's basically non-existent. There is some appropriate music, but it's just 5 licensed songs on a loop. Not even songs chosen for specific stages, they just play in order on loop. The sound effects are generally fine, nothing special to write home about, but what annoyed me is that the sound effect the spiders make is the same that all the robot enemies make, and most enemies make almost no noise at all other than the sounds of their weapons. Overall, it's not bad, but compared to the bombastic nature of the gameplay, it feels underwhelming. Graphically, the low poly style doesn't take long to get used to, and the muddy textures draw more focus towards the enemies, as it should. Sadly, it also highlights the short render distance, with rooms suddenly popping in, especially if they've been damaged. From a gameplay perspective, I think the pacing and difficulty suffers by introducing too many enemy types too quickly. In the first area alone, you have spiders, bandits, sword bandits, shield bandits, rocket bandits, stealth bandits, spider riding bandits, jetpack bandits, cocoons, drones, electric drones, copters, and then the mini-boss and level boss. It's honestly a bit overwhelming to go in blind. Oh, and one random enemy is able to respawn endlessly and will continue to harass you unless you kick it off the edge, so that's fun. The gunplay is overall decent, with a good variety of weapon types and firing patterns to be found. However, some weapons simply don't work correctly when aiming down the sights. I basically got through the majority of the final level only using the slow-mo effect for mere moments at a time, because once the sights were fully raised, my vision was obscured, so I had to shoot before that happened. Platforming and movement in general also overall works quite well, but after prolonged fights that result in a lot of environmental destruction, I found myself wondering why a grappling hook wasn't included. Honestly, more games need grappling hooks. Thankfully, the only game-breaking bug I had was when I started around on floor 3 and spawned inside of a bath and was unable to get out. Them's the breaks when you're dealing with procedural generation, unfortunately. I think the other big problem was the standard ending. I felt like my hard-won victory was completely negated, that all my progress was for nothing. If the game had rewarded my efforts with a permanent perk, or unlocked new weapons to make the next attempt easier, I don't think I would have had any problems with how it was handled, and likely would have carried on a bit further. After playing for 6 hours, suddenly being told that it was all for naught was pretty demotivating. Oh, before I forget though, there is one kinda game-breaking bug that you can abuse to your benefit. You can press the jump button in the pause menu, and it still works, queuing up the action for when gameplay resumes. This means you can queue up as many jumps as you want, effectively allowing you to launch yourself into the stratosphere for your enjoyment. Sadly, because levels are simply vertical slices of the tower, you can't use this to launch straight to the top. You'll still need to clear each floor one at a time, but it's a nice way to skip sections. It's also what led to me discovering this lovely Easter egg in the shortcut selection hub area, where this NPC tells you about the plans for their upcoming game, and then shows you a magic trick if you stay around for long enough. A magic trick where they forcibly close your game. At the end of the day, fans of this genre will have a good time if they can overlook the handful of bugs, and I personally think it's worth paying almost $17 dues to see some neat boss fights that are somewhat reminiscent of Shadow of the Colossus in terms of how you have to climb around them to find weak points. It's the kind of game that I would love someone to try to put their own spin on, as it feels like there's potential bubbling away under the surface. So, with all of that in mind, my final rating for 1001st Hyper Tower is a wish machine out of 10. I wish it were better than it is. It's still good, but not as good as it could be, and I'm unlikely to have my wish granted. Welcome to the end of the video. As always, thank you to all the Crusaders and Templar Knights for supporting the channel, especially our noble knights, Azazel, Daydos, Kartoffeljäger 3, Negi Malevolent, Chef_, and The Crabs. And an extra special thank you to our 6 Knights of the Holy Grail, 100% Normal Human, Ashley Walker, Automatistic, Fuchs Card Expo, Freaky Feline, and Matey8. If you'd like to support the channel, check out the membership options below, or just remember to like and subscribe, that helps too. That's all for now, so if you've made it this far, here's a sneak peek of the next game, and until next time, take care.